The Nintendo Switch. Easily one of my favorite gaming consoles since the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 2. Its simple yet intuitive design and gimmick make it stand out from the rest, and while it may not be the most powerful console out there, it more than makes up for its lack of power with its vast array of games. I mean, let's keep it a stack. I can't be the only one who sometimes boots up the Nintendo eShop just to see what kind of crazy new releases are out or in the works for the future. And honestly, sometimes I'm kinda taken aback by what I see on there. And while heavy hitters like Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, and Odyssey are all fantastic games in their own way, there's always one genre of games I always find myself coming back to whenever I scroll through the eShop. And that genre is the RPG. Xenoblade 2, Dragon Quest XI, Rune Factory 4, Final Fantasy, Pokemon. Okay, maybe not that last one, but as you can clearly see, RPGs have clearly made a home for themselves on the big and's latest console. And with the advent of one of the greatest Nintendo RPGs on the horizon, as well as possibly the return to form of the Paper Mario franchise in the summer, there's only one question left on everybody's mind.
Do it!
Now let me get this out the way real quick. I personally would love to have a Persona game on Nintendo Switch. Which one it is doesn't really matter, but that's not the topic of this video. What is, however, is another game made by Atlus. A game so forgotten and so neglected that it needs to be talked about. And with Platinum Games coming out recently and appeasing the masses with new info about Bayonetta 3, I felt like this was the perfect time to talk about this. I'm talking about Devil Summoner Raido Kuzunoa. Actually, no, I'm talking about Shin Megami Tensei. It's a video on Shin Megami Tensei V. Okay, quick recap. It's January 12, 2017, and Nintendo is holding a massive press conference for the whole world to see. I'm talking about big conference. The reason? They're unveiling their next major console, Project NX. Alongside device specs, naming, pricing, release date, and other infos, they also promised to unveil games and third-party support that would follow alongside the console's release. And it's there, during all the hype, that we witnessed one of the greatest moments in gaming ever. The return of Suda 51 and No More Heroes! We also got a trailer for the new Mega 10 game, but more importantly, No More Heroes! So then a couple of days passed by, right? And Atlus themselves decided to drop the trailer for the new game on their own channel. And after that, the rest is history. Or so we thought. It is now May of 2020. 3 whole years and a whole global pandemic have passed, and the people, yes you, the people, still have not gotten any new info, updates, nothing about the next major entry to the Mega 10 franchise. Now mind you, this isn't all that bad of a thing. I mean, Atlus is technically in their legal rights to not want to tell us anything about their next intellectual property. However, in the last couple of months, we've seen big companies like Nintendo, Paramount, and even Sega come out and publicly announce to their audience about delays for games and other big projects. Hell, Atlus themselves have even gone out of their way to do so with Persona 5. Twice. So clearly, they're no strangers to communicating with their audience. Yet for some reason, still nothing. No insider leaks, no staff press conference, no interviews. Hell, the last major info, if you can even call it that we got about the game was in December of 2019 with a quote that can basically be summed up as, I hope you guys have money because the game is coming out soon. Sometime. Possibly. They don't know. I don't know. Hell, who actually does know? But again, I reiterate, them not saying anything isn't a problem. But I can't be the only one who feels as if there's some kind of like struggles going behind scene that's making development for this next game so much more difficult than it needs to be. To quote the great but sometimes infuriatingly bass-ackwards Shigeru Miyamoto, a delayed game is eventually good, but a rush game is forever bad. And it's with this quote that I think one of the bigger problems with SMT5's development comes to light. This idea of a game being just good. To most people, something being good is sometimes seen as a form of praise. However, when you apply it in the context of a critique, something being good could sometimes come off as just being subpar, or even worse, average at best. Okay, picture it like this. When people usually talk about good RPGs, what comes to mind? Personally, I see Final Fantasy VII, Thousand Year Door, Chrono Trigger, critically acclaimed games. Okay, now, when people typically think of good RPGs, what comes to mind? You done? Do you see what I mean? During the fiasco that was the wait and hype for Persona 5's release, Atlus released a bunch of games on the 3DS and Wii U that went completely under the radar of most people's noses. Out of all those games, 2 of them were mainline Mega 10 games, and 1 was another spin-off / franchise crossover with Nintendo's at the time niche technical RPG, Fire Emblem. Out of those 2 mainline Mega 10 games, the first one sold phenomenally well, being praised as being the rebirth of the Mega 10 series as a whole, as well as being praised as being a fantastic 3DS game. The sequel, however, didn't fare as well. And the crossover game? Well, that game had its own share of problems that stopped it from being viewed positively in the eyes of many. Now look, I know what you're thinking, but bear with me. I don't know if what I'm about to say next is true at all, and it's probably just speculatory, but I feel as if at some point during the development of this game, Atlus really tried to turn this game into a pseudo Persona game. By pseudo, I mean a game that mechanically and gameplay wise is still a core Mega 10 game, but aesthetically and plot wise is more reminiscent of other Mega 10 spin-offs like Persona. SMT4, what most people know as the last major installment in the core Mega 10 series, came out in 2013. Tokyo Mirage Sessions came out 2 years later in 2015, and both the sequel to SMT4 and Persona 5 came out in 2016. Looking at this, you can clearly see what I meant when I said that the development of Persona 5 must have had an influence on Tokyo Mirage Sessions as a whole. In between the development of Apocalypse and Persona 5, at some point during that time period, Atlus was most likely working on Tokyo Mirage Sessions. And it's nothing new for a game company to allocate members of a different department to work on something together, and it feels that that's where things kind of started changing for Tokyo Mirage Sessions and Persona 5 as a whole. Okay, putting that tangent aside, I think I can kind of piece together a real reason why Atlus has been so discreet about Shin Megami Tensei V info. So look, sales wise, Atlus has never looked this good, and I mean never. Not even Persona 4 and SMT4 sold as well as Persona 5 is doing right now. And even if Persona 5 is only barely touching the likes of big RPGs like Kingdom Hearts, Pokemon, and Final Fantasy, for a smallish company like Atlus, this is still monumental. So obviously, the smart thing to do would be to milk it until people just get tired of it. I mean, hell, Nintendo's done it, Sega's doing it right now, so that's not a problem. But now, what do you do when people do get tired of it? Well, obviously, you slowly introduce them to something along the same lines. And this is where we come full circle. Remember what I said about good and good RPGs? This is essentially where Atlus is stuck. With the release of Persona 5, Atlus' standards for game making and the expectations they get from their fans have both changed completely. For them, it's no longer about just making great games, it's about making experiences that both the consumers and they themselves can feel proud about. So now, how do they go about making a game that's on the scale of this, while making it as innovative and as groundbreaking as this, without it completely coming into itself and turning into this? All this while working with new hardware and a new engine completely different from the ones that they're used to, like Gamebrio or their custom P5 engine. Clearly, as you can see, Atlus has their plate full. And realistically, when you think about it, that's probably why they really haven't said anything about the game in a while. For all we know, they probably just got a stable build of their game on Unreal Engine 4. And with Unreal Engine 5 around the corner, the game could probably take another year or so before Atlus themselves feel confident in showing us what they've been working on in secret. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, right now, as I'm speaking to myself in my room, Atlus is probably hard at work trying to make the best Nintendo Switch game that they've ever made. They know what people expect out of them, and they also know what they're capable of. And really, it's only a matter of time before they show to us what Shin Megami Tensei V is. And honestly, this video isn't just about Shin Megami Tensei V. Multiple games have been delayed. And with the state that we are in right now with this global pandemic, I can only hope that the people who are working on these games are doing it in the safest way possible. So even if it means that we won't be seeing stuff like Metroid Prime 4, or a new Donkey Kong game, or Shin Megami Tensei V, or hell, even Project Re Fantasy on Switch or on other consoles in the foreseeable future, if it means that companies like Atlus and others get to work on these games in the safety of their own home and can do so in the best way that they can, then I really don't mind. So before I leave you all, remember, a delayed game is eventually good, but a rush game is forever bad.